What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the 20 Percenters, brought to you by the New Year Network and my book, The Inner Circle, where we focus on what matters: health, wealth, relationships, and time. And I have the pleasure today to sit down again on this new platform with my intuitive, clairvoyant friend, Julie Farha. How are you?
I'm good. Very good.
We were just covering the wave tops of, this fourth quarter as we're in the midst of it right now, and how crazy the energy in the universe has been. And it's just good to get verification that it's not just me, right?
No, it's not.
I was laying down with Nicole at the end of a very long day earlier this week, and had just made mention of like how crazy the schedules have been, what we're doing with the kids and our respective businesses and stuff like that. And it's just like, please tell me that this craziness is going to come to an end at some point. And I don't know that there's an end in sight right just yet. Not anytime soon anyway.
Well, first I'll say that I think that chaos is kind of our new normal, busyness. And so now that you're seeing what your busyness is looking like,
yeah,
you both seem to be getting into a groove of that part of your life and what your kids need. Now it's time for you to carve out some time, schedule in couple time.
Yeah.
And that needs to be part of your platform. Now that you see where you are with everything, you can plug that in.
Yeah. And
because it's always going to be like this.
Yeah. And between what I'm doing with 20 Percenters and everything that she's doing with event and lifestyle coordination, there's things that we do together in support of each other, but that's not the same as couple time.
Right. There's nothing to do with work or the kids, just you two.
Yeah.
Just reconnecting.
Sure.
But you referred to this year. It has been a transitional year for everyone. It seems to me that's how the year is set up.
Okay.
To put us in a different place, if you will, different level for next year.
Right.
Some people have experienced a lot of change. Some really good change, which is kind of stressful too.
Yeah.
And also some tragic change, or a little bit of both. And
sure.
It seems to me, the sense I get is right now, this month in particular, this is the final culmination of the whole year and all of the transition of the year and the events of the year. And a few more shakeups, a little more tension, a few more changes here and there, and a kind of a fine-tuning of everything that we've experienced and learned and hopefully worked through.
Yeah.
And by December, we're all going to feel like we've been through a war.
Okay.
And, not to dismiss those who have gone through war, so forgive me there, Michael.
All metaphors are fine.
Okay.
It's all good.
We're going to feel like we've been through a battle, and we have in a lot of ways, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, a lot of grief involved perhaps. So December's going to be a bit of a regrouping, replenishing, resting as much as one can through the chaotic holidays.
Yeah.
And then by mid-January or so, we will be in a new place. Personally, spiritually, in our lives, you will really be able to start the healing process from what you've gone through, if that's where you are.
Okay.
A lot of people have been transitioning, have been passing away suddenly in people's lives, or after some, long illness. There's been a lot of that this year, suddenly unexpected. And now next year, people will start to really be able to heal and do what they need to do there. You'll be in a different place some people are going through a process of leveling up, is what I like to call it.
Yeah.
And their own personal growth, etc., has catapulted them into a new space.
Sure.
So that's also what we're going to see in January. You're going to be there.
Okay.
You're going to be where this year has prepared you to be there in January, in this new space. And so it's going to be a completely different year. And it's going to be written as we're going along, so I can't really tell you what it's going to look like either. Right.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because when Jeff and I had you on the show, Feed Me, Fuel Me, last year, off the mic, him and I had reached out to you individually because, we're both doing other things. And the common thread way back when was, do we keep doing Feed Me, Fuel Me, or do we part ways on the deal? And at that point in time, there in terms of your reading of our energy and what the universe is providing, there was no reason to call it quits. Fast forward to this summer, you talk about 2019 being a transitional year. Jeff is off doing great things with QSN, and I've rebranded the everything under 20%ers. Did you, was that on your radar? And I asked that specifically just because you've had numerous conversations with the both of us throughout this entire process.
Right. It was around this summer when it was brought to my attention again. And, we've talked about it. Jeff and I have talked about it. And it felt to me like it was time. It had run its course. And what I got the sense really strongly, because I know there was some hesitation, is this a smart thing to do? We want to maintain our friendship and our working relationship. We don't want that to be harmed in this decision if we part ways or take it personally. But I didn't get that feeling at all. What I felt very strongly was you both have other things that it's time for you to do. And that just wasn't it anymore.
Right. So. And, it ended.
And it catapulted you both in two completely different directions, and you guys have gone pretty quickly in those directions in your movement and momentum.
The one thing I can say about Jeff and I is when a decision is made, it is made in concrete, and that concrete sets fast. Watching what he's done through the process of QSN, because he was like knee deep in formulation and figuring out what product he was going to develop first and launch first and and prior to parting ways on Feed Me Fuel Me, I got an inside look at everything that he was doing. And now that it's all out there in the interweb and he's back on social media, and it's really exciting to watch everything that he's done. Whereas my want to keep this dialogue, this narrative of the universe, success, happiness, fulfillment going required we can't miss a beat. I think we might have had 2 episodes left in the queue, one of which being the announcement of leaving Feed Me Fuel Me and rebranding 20%ers, and it was back in the game.
What made you decide to do live video this time?
We at the time we parted ways on Feed Me Fuel Me, we had brought Max on the summer prior. So probably within a couple of weeks of our conversation with you, we took a trip to Wisconsin to pilot video, and Jeff and I had made a commitment back then that if all goes well in Wisconsin, this is the only way that we'll do podcasts. And when I decided to keep podcasting, this is still the only, it's an additional medium. So now we're not only capturing audio, which, is on a ton of platforms, but there's also the visual component too for people that want to sit and they derive connection through the visual medium as well. Yep.
Speaking of that first podcast we did, I don't think I ever told you this, but we have a mutual friend who is a trainer at the village. And I spoke to him and his wife some years ago. We had a great conversation. I'm real great friends, all three of us. And I did a reading for both of them. And it turns out that he is a medium, which means he can communicate with people from the other side. And he didn't know this. He'd never heard of this. So I just explained it to him because I picked that up on him and I explained it to him. And after that, it's as if it was activated in that conversation. Because then all this information started coming through. People were talking to him. My father came through, all this crazy stuff. He was a little bit freaked out for quite some time. You call me all the time. What's going on? What did you do to me? Help, But I didn't do it. This is all you. But so when we did that podcast, I told him about it, and he was having some trouble sleeping for a little while with life going on. And so in the middle of the night, he decided to listen to it. And he told me he said it was a trip. He went into a bit of a trance. Now, when he's communicating with people from the other side. It's a bit of a trance state for him.
Sure.
Something about our podcast with the three of us put him in that trance.
Okay.
And like this meditative state, and all this other information came.
Frequency must have been right.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
That's wild.
Yeah, I loved that story.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
What is it, if there is such a thing? What are the characteristics that make people like yourself, our mutual friend, the medium, what makes them the chosen ones? What makes you one of the chosen?
I cannot answer that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It is. I
think it's something similar, like a very highly gifted healer as a doctor. You know, why do they have that special gift?
Yeah.
Not every doctor has that kind of natural healing ability.
Sure.
But why do they have that special gift? It's the same. It's the same kind of thing.
This
is just more unique.
Sure. And I feel because of its uniqueness, it's maybe chosen is the wrong word. Are you? Because if I go back to our original conversation, there were certain instances early on before your awareness was on par with the gift that pointed to tapping into it in early childhood, which always propagated the question, is it a set of circumstances that bring this thing to light? Kind of like the X-Men movies. There's this trauma that brings out the gift in mutant kind, if you will. But do you feel like it's something that just kind of lies dormant until a certain set of circumstances arise to pull it out of you, or it's going to show up at some point no matter what?
That's a good question. I think it varies for the person and where they are in their journey.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's so inescapable. Sometimes the process of it or the experience of the gift is so loud and blatant, you can't really deny it. It was like some of the things I had experienced as a kid, as I told you. But then you have some people, like our friend, who just all of a sudden, boom, it was activated.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's more of a divine timing kind of thing.
Okay.
He was, part of him was ready for it. His higher self, his soul, whatever you want to call it, was ready for him to be aware of this aspect of him.
Yeah.
And through the conversation, boom, there it went. So I think some of it's one's personal journey where they are, and sometimes it's just what's supposed to happen because that gift is needed to help other people as well as yourself.
Yeah. We had talked about very, very briefly about how I dealt with the passing of my father. And you've never asked me that question before. And the way I described the experience, he passed 3 weeks later, or 2 weeks later, we buried him. 1 week after that, I was in processing into OCS, trained for an entire year in basic infantry tactics, went off to air traffic control school, learned air traffic control down in Yuma, went to Afghanistan, and then came home.
And started grieving.
Yeah.
Because you were pretty busy there, buddy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's exactly the point I was trying to get to.
Sounds intentional too.
Is it wasn't until all of that had slowed down. It's a long ride from Yuma to Scottsdale, to catch a flight or to come up here and party or whatever. And it's on. There were 2 or 3 trips back and forth. It's like 250 miles. Just in the car by myself. And once you get through all the surface level stuff, what you're gonna do when you get to where you're going, who you're gonna see, blah 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 blah, the music on the radio, you run out of superficial thoughts, and then you're left with the deep questions, and you can't run from that shit. And it, unfortunately, we're so busy, we're amidst so much chaos in our daily lives that we don't necessarily intentionally put ourselves in a position where we can run out of the superficial to really take the deep dive and explore what really makes us tick. So beginning to end, that was my dad passed New Year's 2007, and I came home from Afghanistan November of 2010. So almost 3 years had passed before I finally got time to like figure that whole thing out.
I'm going to restate that.
Okay.
Maybe 3 years passed before you finally let yourself have the space to do that, because you were running, babe. Doing great things. And that's what you needed to do for yourself at the time.
Yeah.
Then you were able to, okay, let's do it. Let's move through this.
Mm-hmm. Well, I remember some very interesting conversations, because there's, when people are on their journey and stuff like that happens, and you allow it to derail you or sidetrack you for a period of time. There are certain circumstances, death of a loved one being one of them, where society in your inner circle, and I talk about it in my book, give you a pass. It's cool that you didn't see it all the way through. It's cool that you didn't make it, you didn't do it, whatever, because of XYZ. And I can remember asking my mom, as she was moving through her grieving process, in the interim between him passing and checking into Quantico, I was like, I don't have to go. That second son martyr syndrome, if you will. It's like, I don't have to go. I can just stay here in Tennessee and start a life, And my mom, to her credit, I talk about this in the book too, she was just like, absolutely fucking not. You need to go do that.
That surprised me.
I would, she was like, in her words, I won't let you not do it. And your dad would be extremely disappointed if he was the reason you didn't. So yeah, those were a couple of the things that in these long drives through the desert, I finally gave myself the space to process. And that shit's heavy. But at the same time, if what I've discovered in my growth, if you don't create the space or acknowledge the space when it's there, you will be in, because it's very easy to just turn the radio up as opposed to turn it down and deal with the shit. If you don't handle it, it will inhibit your progress towards whatever your North Star is until you do. And eventually, things will come to a head, and whether you want to or not, whether the circumstances are right or not, you're gonna have to deal with it.
Yeah, you're not gonna have a choice.
So better to deal with it while you got options than to deal with it because you have to. It's what I've
grief
come
is
to.
definitely something you have to move through. You don't get over it. You don't get on the other side of it.
Yeah.
You move through it, and it changes.
Mm-hmm.
I still grieve my father. You still grieve your father, but it's different.
Sure. You talk about 2019, setting the stage for 2020. What is it? Is this something that comes in waves? This chaos that we're amidst right now that kind of sets the stage? Is this something that we can look forward to later on down the road, like it's going to happen again? Because what I gather from how you state it, we as a collective, the aware and enlightened, are in this period of chaos that is laying the foundation for our respective next levels in 2020. Is this evolution periodic, or is it just this random set of universal circumstances that has created this collective chaos for next year?
I think I want to say it's a little bit of both, if that's even possible. But we're starting a new decade next year. And oddly, that never really even occurred to me until recently. The significance of that. But we're still going to have stuff happen in life, but let's see if I can explain how this feels to me.
Sure.
But it's like Okay, so you're going through all these experiences and you're learning how to manage them. It's expanding you. It's changing you. It's making you more aware of your inner resources, or tapping or finding new ones so you can cope and manage and heal and deal, ideally.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore, one thing, next year, you'll be able to deal with things a little more easier. It's almost like you're going to be a little bit more detached. Things aren't going to take you down as much. Stuff's still going to happen, but it's not going to be like man down every time something happens. And it also feels very universal, though, like as a spiritual body of humankind, next year is the beginning of a whole new phase.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all on this together, and some are going to come, some are going to want to, some things are going to get much harder for some people, some things are going to get much easier. I don't like things to sound doom and gloom.
Yeah.
But you can see, I'm not going to get political here, but
Sure.
you can see the chaos going on out there today, as a matter of fact. And in different countries, there's a lot of protesting going on, and Hong Kong and Lebanon. I mean, it's almost like the world's on fire.
Right.
And there's so much so much polarity, and so much the contrast is becoming greater and greater, and the chasm is getting bigger, and people are wanting to create more change too, which is also part of this new wave. It's all about the new. It's all about creating the new, seeing what's really going on there, removing the veil, and trying to make things change. And that change is going to start happening now. I don't know who, how, when, what it's going to look like. It's not my place to say that.
Yeah.
This is not about political parties or any of that stuff, because I believe so firmly that nothing changes until you do.
Right.
So all of what we're seeing is a reflection of us.
Yes.
We as a humankind are a little bit more polarized in ourselves, and in our communities, in our surroundings. We've become that way. We've become more isolated. We've become more me, more self-focused.
Yeah.
And that's a reflection. It's being reflected to us. But yet this is also causing us to come together in a lot of ways and create more sense of community, because some of these systems we have aren't working, or people are struggling, so they're needing more community to survive and thrive. Community is a really big thing with me, and that's the divine aspect of what's going on here.
Right.
You can see that playing out in different areas of your life, perhaps people you know. So that's where the pendulum is starting to go, but it's just it's coming this way.
Sure. It's interesting that you talk about the dichotomy of connection and isolation. I was having a conversation with a client of mine not too long ago, and I was explaining to him everything I'm building with the Leaders Forum on a monthly basis with 20%ers, and the culminating event, the New Year Network. And for people that are wanting to move the needle next year. And he's like, I'm a huge fan of everything that you're building. And here's why. Because he plays in cyberspace. He does SEO and internet marketing and all that kind of good stuff for the company that he works for. And the internet is making the case for you. At no point in human history have we been able to reach out and touch somebody with the ease that we are now. And at the same time, we have never, ever, ever, as a society, felt so alone.
Isolated and alone, yeah.
And in, towards the top of that pyramid, it's even worse in terms of isolation, with regards to people that are self-starters, that are in that entrepreneurial, the leadership roles. It was already lonely. Now it's really fucking lonely. So to have a resource in 20%ers where this discussion can take place, where we as leaders of our respective places in society can let the hair that I don't have down, and cry in each other's beers a little bit, get a swift kick in the ass, and grow as a result, and understand that it's not just you. You're not in this thing alone, and you're not restricted to your own devices, your own experience, your own education for the facilitation of your success and fulfillment. Mm-hmm. And it's really, really interesting that as you talk about the chaos of the universe, that this platform continues to grow to fill that chasm that you're talking about.
And these things are, I think it's going to be more and more necessary and important and helpful for people. But back to like you were talking about the community, you're not alone. My father came to this country in 1950. Mm-hmm. And so the immigrant mentality in that regard from the country he was from, the Middle East, I've seen firsthand when I went back to visit a couple of years ago. And 4 families grew up together in one building, 4 different apartments, and they really depended on each other to survive and thrive.
Sure.
That's what you had to do in those dynamics in these villages with little money, they had to pool everything together, the resources, all of what they had.
Right.
And we've gone away from that here because we've been able to be, so we've had such opportunities here to thrive and create what you want and the systems to support that, and we don't have that need. We didn't have that need for basic survival. Mm-hmm. The community was more of a want, not a need.
Sure.
Now it's becoming more of a need. Mm-hmm. And not in a bad way, right. Because there's such a blessing and a gift in community and knowing you're not alone and not having to do this alone all the time, and it just makes life easier.
Sure.
And I see the pendulum going from here to here, and now now it's becoming a preference. Mm-hmm. Somewhat of a need now because of all the chaos going on, but you're seeing the value in it. Mm-hmm. And communities in your kids' school, in your place of work, in your neighborhoods, in your gym, wherever communities congregate. Yeah, there's something you can tap into there to get what you need and to help someone get what they need.
Yeah.
And I see that is definitely going to be a big part of what we're moving into next year.
Sure. I mean, hell, even in the gym. I mean, I was at a wedding reception for one of my members and his new wife on Saturday, and then I drove all the way up to Sedona for another one of my members, or two of my members. Two of my members got married up in Sedona
to each other
this past weekend. Nice. And that community, the dating game is so funny to me, with apps and all that stuff now. My wife and I met really organically. My best friend married her cousin. We met at their wedding, and that kind of allowed us, even though she turned me down, over the next couple of years to get to know each other and crystallize our relationship. And things happen, or the microwave mentality of how things are supposed to happen nowadays. We'll go out on date night and watch people on their first date, and it is interesting to say the least, because even though via this digital device, the person on the other end checked all the boxes, there's still like
an organic component to it,
right? Yeah. It's not organic,
right?
It's
lacking in the dating. There's an organic component that's lacking here.
You can't, through questionnaire, or the answers to questionnaire, if that's all you get to reference, you can't really derive context. So there's a lot of like the inherent investigative part of meeting somebody in real time somewhere and just doing the get to know you thing, as opposed to walking into a meeting, a date, with a lot of preconceived notions.
And the instant gratification need too.
Right.
Give them 5 minutes. Okay, I'm done. And sometimes you need just 5 minutes and you're done.
Right. But I find that part really interesting with regards to just relationships. In that, it's like, a lot of the questions that Nicole and I get is, well, when am I going to find my Michael or my Nicole? And I mean, the honest truth is, for us, when you're right with you, they'll show up.
Don't you remember me telling you that it was going to hit you hard and fast when it
came?
Oh,
yeah. That's exactly what happened.
I know.
Yeah. But it's I wasn't ready way back when, but yeah, the relationship thing is one of absolute patience.
Mm-hmm.
You can't rush it.
Live your life, feel your life, have fun with it.
You can't force it. One of the things I tell like the single guys in the gym is like, you got to make your top 10. The top 10 things that you need to get out of the way while you're single, and don't commit to a marriage unless you've checked off all those boxes, and
be realistic about what's actually possible. One of my girlfriends summed this up perfectly. Was it just this week? She said, you can't look for a custom fit in an off-the-rack world.
Ooh.
Thought it was great.
That's nice. Yeah. I mean, tell me more about that conversation.
We were just texting about some personal things and things that we liked that was working for her in the situation, the things that weren't. And then she said, well, then she blurted that out. And I was like, because there's some things she likes about the guys she's with.
Okay.
And some things she has a buddy that she's close to that she would like to maybe,
date?
No, not at all. But see some qualities in him. It's a guy that she went to school with, and she doesn't see him that often. But just some things like that. And then she's like, she said, yeah, well, you can't get a custom fit in an off the rack world.
Yeah. I mean, there's just
you can always find traits in someone that you're with that you see in someone else that they're lacking. That's just, we can all say that. I'm sure my guy says that about me. And
well, I tell the girls at the gym very jokingly that all women are crazy, and it's just up to us as men to decide what kind of crazy we're into.
There's actually women say that too. It's like, what kind of crazy are you okay with? Because we're all crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My brother, who's been married for almost 15 years now, and they have been through it. He's a Marine.
Your MMA brother?
No, my big brother, the Marine. Multiple deployments and all that kind of good stuff. And I can remember having a conversation as Nicole and I started to move towards marriage. And he was like, dude, you got to be able to talk about it. Like, whatever it is, you got to be able to talk about it. And you got to know that you're not going to wake up the next morning because you talked about it. And I feel like that's a lot of the common narrative that I hear amongst the single and dating these days, is that at the first sign of adversity or friction in the relationship, there's not enough foundation to withstand that storm.
And I'm going to add to that too, there's not enough self-awareness.
Yeah.
I think relationship success has a lot to do with that too.
Sure.
It's just a level of self-awareness that you need to have.
Yeah. As you move through these conversations of intuition with people with regards to relationship, what are the common hang-ups that they have? Because it all starts with self. Everything boils down to a projection of something that's missing within us that manifests in not being right in our respective universe. So, as you have this conversation over and over and over again, what are some of the common themes that you run across?
Well, this is going to sound a little abstract, but I hear a lot of, they should do this, should do that, and we all do that, but to me, that's more of an expectation and a bit of a martyr mentality. Because if you're thinking about what someone should be doing, you're not focusing on what you're doing or not doing, and you're also not paying attention to or focusing on what is actually happening, and,
Sure.
dealing with that, addressing that, embracing it, enjoying it, whatever the case may be. It's, well, but he should be doing that, but he's not. He's doing this. So what do you want to do with this? How are you going to handle this? Does it even need to be addressed? I think sometimes we can over-address things, and we can sometimes under-address things.
Right.
But I think one of the things I get a lot tells me that people just aren't very patient with their mates.
Yeah.
And with their stuff and with their ups and downs that you have as well. And they expect them to be this being that can encompass all of these needs and handle all these needs. And that's just not human nature.
Yeah.
That's why you have your buddies. That's why you have your girlfriends to meet these other needs.
Yeah.
But it's expectations that I think are unrealistic. And what I say is, if you're going to complain about what someone's doing, check in real quick and see what you're doing first. If they're not giving you enough, how much are you giving?
Right.
Because I believe you get what you give in relationships. And if I'm giving to you constantly, if I'm not giving to you, you're not going to give to me.
Right. Yeah.
Hopefully,
Sure.
And I don't mean that as a keeping score.
Right.
But if you're not generous,
yes.
If you're holding back for whatever reason, it's just not, then you're not going to be receiving that back.
Yeah.
It's that give and take.
Sure. And I think with regards to the give and take thing, to expound upon the not keeping score part, Nicole and I don't believe that there is such thing as a 50-50 dynamic in a relationship. It's 100 and 100. You're either all in on each other, or you're not.
So there is no scorecard, but boy, that is a common thing. And what else I notice is people complain to me about their mate, things that their mate are complaining about them, the things that they're doing as well. He's doing this, well, so are you.
Sure.
And the people just don't recognize that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that, and that's where the scorecard thing comes in.
I think that no matter what you do, how balanced a dynamic you try to create, there won't be balance.
It's here and then it's here. It comes and goes, and people just need to line up.
Yeah, I mean, we're constantly, and I'll just speak to Nicole and I's relationship. We are constantly picking up where the other left off. It's like, I got this event, you got the kids.
Right.
I got this event, now you got the kids. I got to go shoot this podcast, you got the kids. And it's this, but it's okay. It's required. It's not hard. It's not none of that facilitation is
it's not forced. It's just
it's not forced.
It's part of the gig.
I don't feel obligated. It's just like this is what I signed up for. This is this is the deal. But I think that you have to be okay with who you are, and at the same time understand the wants and the needs of your partner. And I think that's where the communication element really shows up.
And not judge them for those wants and needs.
Yeah. The lack of clear communication as to what you want, what you need. And I think that requires a lot of self-exploration to be able to articulate that accurately.
And even that articulation, a man needs it said in a different way than a woman does. So there's that component too. And I also think we tend to treat our mate the way we want to be treated. It isn't necessarily the way we want. I would show you love the way I would want you to show it to me, and it might not be the same thing.
No, absolutely not. I think that specific dynamic is incredibly rare, where my expression of affection and your expression of affection are literally the same. That is very rare. As I roll through my couples Rolodex, I can't name one off the top of my head where that dynamic exists.
So then you learn to recognize that in your mate and appreciate that's what they're showing me.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's where appreciation comes from. Yeah.
But we all just need to lighten up a bit.
Sure.
And not take all this stuff so seriously, and not take every action or inaction make it such a big deal and just let stuff go.
Yeah. How do you, speaking of flow, how do you, as in tune as you are, not get involved in the quote unquote signs? You know, how do you not let that, how do you not take everything as a sign?
Not very well, I have to tell you. So I have had a challenge of not getting completely immersed in the stuff of the people closest to me. And it's been a real challenge for me this year. And because I just take it all on energetically, even though I'm not necessarily physically trying to address things or take action or assess what do I need to do. It just covers me. And not their fault. It's all me.
Sure.
And I don't realize it until I'm overly emotional, overly tired, can't focus on anything. I know my cues of, okay, feeling disconnected and not being centered and grounded, and I got a bunch of stuff on me. I know what that looks like for me. Yep. So sometimes that's when I pull it back. Okay. Hopefully I don't let it get there. I'm getting a little bit better about that. And that's where in fact, we just talked about that this morning. My practice needs to really be on par of drinking my water, plugging in the morning, clearing myself. When I get, somebody put it this way, she said, you get so overwhelmed that you forget to do these things. You get so overwhelmed with what's coming at you, what's on you, and all this other energy that you forget to do these things that are important to you. Yes. And so sometimes it comes a matter of me literally setting my phone for a few different times to go off during the day for me to pause and do that. Yeah. Yeah. And unfortunately, I got to do it every day on my phone. It doesn't happen automatically. I can't seem to figure that out. But I wish it would, because I forget to do it in the morning sometimes. I can help you set. You got an iPhone? Okay, yeah. I can help you set that up. Because that helps me not go down like that. Right. Because it doesn't help anybody. And
I will tell you that the calendar on my phone, the alarm on my phone, is my saving grace. If it's not on my calendar, I'm going to mess it up. I've been through that numerous times with my wife. And at the same time, it really inhibits me from scheduling distractions over priorities. Like for example, one of my coaches was sick, and I had to coach 5 a.m., which is when I typically train. But I had a gap in my schedule later in the morning where I could take a class at the gym. So I immediately booked that hour in my calendar because immediately after booking that hour, I had a client call me, text me, and say, hey, can I get in with you? And had I not flipped open my calendar, if that gap was still there, I wouldn't have trained. I would have inherently booked the client instead of taking care of myself. And that has been a very strategic and hard lesson
I think everybody
for me
has
to
to
learn.
Go through that, and not just entrepreneurs.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. Just the self-prioritization.
Yeah.
Make sure that you're taken care of, that your energy is good, your cup is full, so that you can then fill others' cup.
I even forgot to pay my water bill for 2 months. I've never done that in my life. And the only reason I knew that was because I got a notice that they were about to turn me off. That was never happened before. Sure. I'm like, girl, you are checked out.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
So, I mean,
So getting your practice, maintaining your practice is so crucial. But I also having ADHD and ADD does not help. You know, I actually recently learned it takes us 3 times longer to form a habit.
Really?
Yeah.
So you got to commit.
Oh, and I have yet to do that with these things, clearly, because I commit for a while, and then I get, back in the swing of things and get overloaded. Then I realize I need to get committed again.
Yeah. I mean, I think that when, you're, operating in this place of leadership, one of the things that really derails us, that hangs us up, are these expectations of leadership in terms of we're just supposed to have it all together
all the time,
and that is, if you allow yourself to believe that, or you don't strategically put yourself in the company of others to tell you that that's not fact, like it takes the fun out of everything that you're trying to accomplish.
Well, that typical personality is hard on themselves anyway.
Right. Yeah,
so
absolutely.
that just perpetuates that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that also requires a level of awareness.
It's like it takes this much to feel like a success and this much to feel like a failure.
Oh, yeah.
Boom, it can all go away like that.
It's like
in your mind.
Yeah. Oh my.
But I failed at this. I didn't pay my water bill.
Mm-hmm. I double booked an appointment.
Yeah.
That never happens. You get a pass. It's all good.
It's okay.
It's like, no, my business is crumbling around me. Like, and but yeah, going back to what you were saying about relationships, the same is true with regards to how we treat ourselves, mm-hmm. With all this external influence. It's vital that we are kind to ourselves.
And caring, this is something else I've been reflecting on lately, caring less about what people think.
Sure.
That's so important, to care less.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because being worried about what someone else is going to think if I do some of those things, is detrimental and unnecessary and unproductive and unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm simplifying it to that degree.
Yeah, sure.
But I think about people that I know that really just don't really care about what people think, and they do what they want all the time, and they have little stress.
Yeah.
They're not the most gracious, generous people in the world, but they just don't have a lot of stress.
Right. And
they're in their own little happy bubble.
For a lot of reasons, they're winning the game.
Yeah, they're doing their thing, but but I think sometimes we care too much about that in a negative way.
Right, in a detrimental way.
Yeah.
You play it small when you leave opportunity on the table. You don't level up. These are all the consequences of caring too much about what strangers or people that have very little opinion of your life's direction have.
I just read this thing on Instagram this past week that said something along the lines of, if the person you're with doesn't support you in setting boundaries, doing self-care, and a few other things, something like that, if you're worried about them leaving you for doing these things, then they're not for you.
100%. Yeah. So what's next for you?
Oh, well, as I told you before, I'm doing some consulting for a company in California. It's a startup, so that's constantly evolving, which is fun to watch that process.
Sure.
And doing some writing for them.
Okay.
And then I have this other little side business that uses a different part of my brain, and so that's that's fun too.
Kind of diversifying a little bit.
Yes, because I love this work, but I got to dig really deep to do this, and to have to dig deep like this all day long can be a little draining.
Sure.
So the other thing I'm doing, the men's custom clothing, is a little lighter. It's a little more surface. It doesn't. I can just go do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have to make sure I'm tuned in, plugged in, cleared out.
Yeah.
So it's a great balance.
Sure. So. And I feel like for as easy as it is to be involved with those in the intuitive interaction, that's a welcome relief.
It is. I mean, as I said, I have a hard enough time staying out of the stuff and the people I'm closest to, that I'm with every day.
Right.
Unless I can really master that a little bit better, I need to make sure I have that boundary for myself. So.
Yeah. Well, I know as a result of our previous conversation on Feed Me, Feel Me, there were a lot of people that reached out to you.
They did. And some wonderful people.
And got some amazing clarity on whatever they were working through with you. So I want, on this new platform, 20%ers, I want to give them that opportunity as well. Where can we go find and support and investigate Intuitive Clairvoyance?
On my website at juliefarha.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Social media?
Some.
Okay.
Yeah, some.
Here and there. Okay.
Yeah, I am on Instagram. Julie Sees It All.
Okay.
And I haven't worked my Facebook page much, so.
That's okay.
I know.
Yeah.
See, I'm supposed to do that.
Seems like you're doing just fine.
Well, and that's something else I'm trying to work more on, is doing what feels right at the moment in my work and not what I have to do.
Yeah.
Because it's just a different path, different flow.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, cool. I'm glad to see you grounded.
Yeah.
you seem good. Your energy is great.
It's been a year of a lot of change for me too.
Mm-hmm.
Good change.
Yeah.
Good change. But like I said, change can be stressful.
Mm-hmm.
Finding your rhythm in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's good though.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we can connect and we can make something happen with the New Year Network.
Yeah. Sure.
I'll get you some more information on that. For those of you not in the know, head to 20percenterscircle.com and click on the New Year Network, and really look forward to Julie's episode debuting, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Yeah, and if you haven't checked out Inner Circle, make sure you pick that up as well. And remember, continue to focus on the things that matter: health, wealth, relationships, and time. We'll see you next week.